Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Should I proceed?
Please.
Okay, thank you. Allora, notato Paolo, on behalf of the Flores case Ohana, my name is Kalani Flores, my wife Polani Case, and our daughter Kapule Flores here today. E ala me ka oia i'o me ke aloha o Mauna wa Kea. Awaken with the truth and aloha of Mauna Kea. Mauna wa Kea is our piko. Our piko is sacred. What I passed out before you and to all parties here is a summary of our oral argument presented here today. To make it clear and simple, it's very evident that the applicant, University of Hawaii at Hilo, and a 30-meter telescope, International Observatory LLC, failed to fulfill their burden of proof to demonstrate that the proposed TMT project is consistent with the criteria outlined in Hawaii Administrative Rules, Section 13.5, as well as associated legal authorities. This project is not capable of meeting the Conservation District 8 criteria as stipulated in HAR Section 13.530C. I'm going to bullet down to why it cannot meet the permit as such. I'm going to provide relevant and material. Let me stop. During the course of this contested case hearing, the Flores case Ohana and other petitioners provided relevant, credible, material evidence, numerous witnesses as to why, first of all, the CDUA is deficient as such, and why the university and TIO hasn't met the burden, and more other problems regarding that. But let's begin with, first of all, what's required. There's certain actions that are mandated by law and statutory provisions to be completed first before you can even approve a permit as such. And let's begin with the kapa'akai. BLNR, DLNR is compelled to complete an independent kapa'akai analysis for the lands of Mauna Kea. It's required. There's a court case kapa'akai that explicitly says that. And yet the applicant, counsel for the applicant and counsel for the project developer are trying to say that it's been done. It hasn't been done. In fact, testimonies provided by DLNR's administrator of OCCL, Mr. Sam Lemo, testified to the fact that it has not been done. It's in the record. It's testimony that he presented to quote, DNL don't have the staffing, the resources, the time to go and take on doing an independent analysis of these things. End of quote. It hasn't been done. Lack of resources or money to do it is not an excuse. If you can contract the hearing officer for nearly $250,000 to run a contested case and not do the kapa'akai analysis first, then something is wrong here. Something is clearly wrong. The money had to come from somewhere. Lack of money, I understand the staff doesn't have the ability to do it, but there's no reason why not contracting somebody to do this. Because this is a bigger picture. It's beyond this TMT. It's beyond everything. Kapa'akai has to be done. Why? Because if you listen to the applicants and you listen to the developer, they're saying there's no cultural practices there. That is false. Testimony was provided during this contested case of the practices that occur on the Northern Plateau, that occur in the site there. These are traditional and customary practices that the board here must take an independent analysis of and assess it, determine what's at stake, how to protect it, and come up with measures to protect it. That has not been done here. It has not been done. Yet, that's why you don't leave it to the applicant to do it, because they are saying that there's none there. There's no cultural practices. There's nothing there. That's why you, the board, or DNR are supposed to do it independently of the applicant. They cannot be, they falsified of what was there. Testimony was provided. Testimony on our behalf, other petitioners, other cultural practitioners testified to the extent of what's there on the Northern Plateau, an undeveloped area. That's the key part to this whole Kapakai analysis. The Northern Plateau is not developed. The board has obligation to first identify these cultural practices. Secondly, they have an obligation to what extent these traditional and customary Native Hawaiian practices occur there, and to how you would protect them. That's the board's responsibility. The applicant and TIO have argued that, well, we have done these studies before, and we had this contested case, and here's all the information. But it's not complete. Because cultural practitioners who are in this contested case, it's just a handful. It doesn't include the numerous other cultural practitioners that are associated with cultural practices on the mountain. So this hearing cannot suffice for an independent Kapakai analysis. It has to be more broad than just a few people who even had the ability to be here on a contested case for 40-something days, several months at a time. It lacks the ability. The analysis lacks all the other cultural practitioners. That's why you need to either contract somebody or have the staff do this Kapakai analysis. That's step one of doing anything before you even approve a permit. Secondly, the university and Office of Mauna Kea Management has to complete a 5-year review and update of the Mauna Kea Comprehensive Management Plan before you can even pass this approval. Because part of what they're saying to be the 8 criteria 1 and 2, they're saying that they're using the comprehensive management plan as a reason why they meet the criteria. But they're not in compliance with the management plan. The management plan needs a 5-year update. That was due in 2014. The comprehensive management plan, if you read it carefully, it states in the management plan that the management plan was not done for any new projects and was not done for the TMT. If the comprehensive management plan was not done for this project, because it was not done for the project, then that's why you have to update it and revise it. They're required every 5 years. It's one of the management actions that has to be done. The university has to be in compliance with the comprehensive management plan. You need the comprehensive management plan in order to get a permit for this project. They're not in compliance. There's other corrective actions that need to be done in the comprehensive management plan and in the Mauna Kea Reserve Master Plan of 2000. Okay, so in the master plan of 2000, there's certain criteria and guidelines for the design of this project on the Northern Plateau. One of the guidelines, and I'm just going to bring your attention to the section in the back, this diagram here. The Mauna Kea Science Reserve Master Plan gives specific criteria for design considerations for a project on the Northern Plateau in this area that we're referring to, Area E. They knew at that time there was a planning to develop a large telescope like the TMT. So in the management plan, in the master plan, they give specific design guidelines. If the university and TIO actually followed these guidelines, this is what the shape and size as pertained in as specified in guidelines would look like. This is the size of the existing Canada, France, Hawaii telescope. If you look at it, it will be less than the size of that if they followed the master plan guidelines. But they didn't. They didn't follow the guidelines. The guidelines were specific to protect the visual impact. This is the coloring of what a telescope such as a TMT being proposed in Area E is supposed to be like. You can't even see it, right? Because the coloring looks like that. It blends in with the landscape. What's being proposed does not follow any of these design guidelines, which were intended to mitigate the visual impacts on an undeveloped northern plateau. So instead, what we have is a telescope that's, if you look at the state capitol, is twice the height of the state capitol. They didn't follow the guidelines in the master plan, and that is why the impacts are there. And I'll continue on in a rebuttal with what's left. And I thank you at this time for ability to speak on our behalf. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Aloha. On behalf of the Flores case Ohana, my name is Kalani Flores. The Flores case Ohana also joins in with the stay of execution of the CDUP pending appeal. Okay, let's just get something straight here. Is that, first of all, the council for the university has forgotten what is the truth of things. They've mischaracterized, misstated things, inaccurately stated things. They even forgot now what's true or not true. And when they say the 5-year comprehensive management plan review is permissive, they're incorrect. What I bring your attention to, the handout I gave to you, is actually an Exhibit B02H. It's a report that was sent to the annual report from the university regarding the comprehensive management plan that's given to the board for the consideration. This was dated June 2015. What's lacking in this whole process is that the staff of DLNR and the board does not do any assessment of the reports. Who's looking at the reports? The report, it's not even an action item. It's just a report to the board. I'm bringing information to you. That's what this contested case here is for. If you take a look at the back page, on page 26 of this report that the university gave, if you look under one of their management action plans, FLU1, it says, follow design guidelines presented in the 2000 master plan. That's an action management plan. That's an action item that they have to follow. Now they're saying it's permissive. Well, we don't have to do it. It's conceptual. Let's read what they reported out. It's highlighted here. It says, the design review process, which incorporated the 2000 master plan's design guidelines, are being used in the review of the 30-meter telescope project. They're saying they're doing it. Then now they're saying, oh, it's just conceptual. I presented evidence in this case that they haven't even done it. But now, because they haven't done it, they're saying it's conceptual. Let's look where else they're falsifying or inaccurate information because they can't meet the criteria or the action plans that they said. On page 27 of the same document, Annual Report 2015, action item MEU2, if you take a look here, it says the 5-year CMP revision interval is 2014. The revision process initiated by OMKM for eventual submission to BLNR. They're saying it's optional, it's permissive. It's not. In this plan, it's saying they're working on it. The point is, they're working on it, but they haven't done it. And you have to have the comprehensive management plan done in order to meet criteria 1 and 2. They don't meet criteria 5, 6, and 7 as well. Things in the CDUA was put, information is inaccurate, incomplete. I look at this diagram here, and this is from the CDUA Exhibit B021, B02L. They put this information here and they exclude a lot of relevant information regarding cultural resources. We brought forth several archaeologists, 3 to the point, that explain why things was missing here. This is what's in a CDUA. This is what really should be in a CDUA. They telescoped down, they left out information. All of this is in our findings of facts. What they really should be looking at is this whole area here. These triangles and dots represent hundreds of shrines and other cultural properties there. This whole area is the Mauna Kea Summit Region Historic District. There's a shifty number 50, 10, 23, 26, 8, 6, 9. They didn't assess the impacts upon the whole district. They're required to do that by law. Not by the petition area, but the impacts of the whole district. There's no assessment of the impacts of this project upon the district itself. I have so much to say. I'm just going to of why this permit should not be issued at this time, because it's deficient, incomplete, inaccurate, outdated. The CDUA is outdated. I just want to just close with is that as disclosed through Ike Kupuna, from ancestral knowledge from those kupuna that are still on the northern plateau, I conclude by saying that from those ancestors and divine beings who are still present on Mauna Wakea, everyone in these times are accountable and responsible for their actions. Thus, are you, members of the board, truly accepting the responsibility and accountability for the proposed, irreparable, destructive, and detrimental actions you would execute upon this sacred landscape, this sacred mountain, a temple, a grandparent, a chief, a protector, a teacher, a guide, if approving such a project? We, the Flores Case Ohana, comprised of myself, Kalani Case, Havani Rios, Kapolei Flores, and Ruth Alawa, our ancestors, stand proudly with the other petitioners here, protectors, and other indigenous people who still standing have to stand to protect not just what is sacred, but what is the essence of who we are. Mauna Kea is still sacred. Kukia Imauna. We will stand as guardians with the heart of the mountain within us. Eo. For the record, this is in Kalani Flores representing the Flores Case Ohana.
Yes. Mr. Flores, no disrespect to you, but there were a few questions I wanted to ask Mr. Kayama because he is a licensed attorney.
Yes.
And the reason I think you've certainly studied this issue very carefully and you're a very able representative of your point of view. The questions are maybe a little bit on the legal side. They'll get to be a little bit legal, so that's why I wanted to ask Mr. Kayama. But of the various parties, you're the next one that I'm going to pick.
Okay, thank you.
to ask those questions, because they deal with Native Hawaiian religion and Native Hawaiian religious practices. And religion and religious are big words, and sometimes people don't mean the same thing when they talk about them. I'm going to start off with the concepts as the court cases in the U.S. Supreme Court, for example, talk about religion and religious practices. Are you at all familiar with those kinds of court cases?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll be on the same page, I hope, because that's the sense I'm using the word religion and religious. Okay. So is it your position that the TMT would interfere with the free exercise of Native Hawaiian religious practices?
It's almost like a loaded question there, but the reason I say that is because, as you heard from the council's testimony of the university and TIO, and I kind of blurry on who said it, but in their document, because they had a joint document, as we all know, their findings of fact, the UHH and the TIO. So it's commingled, their arguments and their positions. What they're trying to do at this point in time is trying to redefine Native Hawaiian customary and traditional practices and trying to put it in a box as being religious. and that in saying that it's not protected. But Native Hawaiian customary traditional practices sometimes do include aspects, if you would refer to the definition of religion, sometimes it includes aspects that don't include religion. It's all encompassing. In actuality, in the trueness of it all, when you look at Hawaiian culture, there was no per se word for religion in the traditional Hawaiian culture. There is the word ho'omana that's been used to translate, but the Hawaiians didn't have a concept of, and I say, the Hawaiians didn't have a terminology for religion because it's all encompassing. Spirituality, cultural practices is all encompassing. It's not just religion. So regardless of the other court cases, the state of Hawaii is very clear in Article 12, Section 7 about protecting Native Hawaiian traditional and customary practices, whether it includes religious aspects or not. The court hasn't separated that out. The Supreme Court ruling as such hasn't separated that out. So in conclusion, the proposed project would adversely impact our Native Hawaiian traditional and customary practices, whether that includes religious aspects or not to it. And I'm not certain if that exactly answered your question or not, or you want me to further elaborate on it, but that's kind of my sense of it.
Well, that's your answer. So that's fine. So if I understand really the most fundamental proposition that's being put to the board is that Mauna Kea is so sacred that no building should be put there. I mean, am I getting that wrong? Am I missing that? Misstating that?
Mauna Kea is sacred. And that is undisputed. And that statement, Mauna Kea is sacred, is actually in the university's own documents. In the comprehensive management plan, in the front document part of it, it says Mauna Kea is sacred. And it lists all the reasons why and all the historical and cultural aspects of why it's sacred. So the dispute is not about Mauna Kea, whether it's being sacred or not. We're at a point here that we know that this mountain is significant. Not just on a cultural perspective, but environmentally perspective. It's significant. It's in a conservation district. We do know the existing development of astronomy has significantly impacted the top. So the question is, how much more do you impact this mountain? This mountain that we all know has significance to it. What's being proposed, it's outside of what's already been developed.
Oh, wait, you've ably made those points before, right. And I'm just trying to make sure that I understand by having you answer a couple of questions. And is it wrong? I mean, is it your point of view that there should not be any building on the mountain, further building, because it is so sacred? Is that a fair understanding of your point?
My point is that it goes beyond why this particular project should not be built on a mountain. It goes beyond what the mountain is sacred. It goes beyond that the impact upon the natural and cultural resources, upon Native Hawaiian customary traditional rights and practices, it impacts that. How can you put an 18-story building that this county doesn't even allow to be built? You can't even build that building on the UH campus because the size of its height exceeds the county height limit. How can you put something so significant and substantial in this area that we already know is culturally and environmentally sensitive? That's the big picture of it. And because it can't meet the 8 criteria, whether the mountain is sacred or not, this project cannot meet the 8 criteria. So it's not about the issue about being sacred and you cannot build or not build. It's about whether you can meet the 8 criteria in order to even build in this conservation district on the undeveloped part of the Northern Plateau. It's like, okay, so the arguments before I heard before the board before was that, okay, it's already been done, this has been done, already have development there, it's just one more. It's not just one more. It's one more outside of the existing footprint of the existing development on the mountain. This is on the Northern Plateau. Undeveloped on the Northern Plateau. So it's more than about why, it's not about being sacred that you cannot build there. It's more than beyond that, why this project, by law, cannot be built there.
Is it worse to build a telescope, from your point of view, from a cultural point of view, on the Northern Plateau than on the Summit Ridge?
Okay. I'm going to explain why the Northern Plateau, the significance of the Northern Plateau. If you go on the Northern Plateau, there's hundreds of ahus or shrines on the Northern Plateau. The Hawaiians didn't put the ahus and heiaus or large structures on top of the summit because they knew the summit, the top of the pico, must remain unobstructed and clear. So when you go on the Northern Plateau, which I'm not sure if you've ever been there, but I've been to the ahus and shrines. What's the significance of these ahus and shrines that many peoples came up to build, whether it's kahuna or families who are connected to these places? The ahus and shrines has been told to us and explained to us through Ike Kupuna. And when I say Ike Kupuna, we're talking about ancestral insight from the ancestors and the Kupuna who are still there, the serve as guardians. The Northern Plateau, you have hundreds of these shrines at that particular elevation. These shrines are interconnected. Some of these shrines create a star map. So you're talking about journaling information. The information is embedded in the site. The information is embedded in the stones. The information is embedded in these ahus on the Northern Plateau. When you remove them and destroy them, you lose that knowledge, that insight, that ike that's connected to that place. It's destroyed. It's been told to us, it's not just, okay, we're going to move that here and there. This huge, massive proposed project would obstruct the sight lines, which has not been assessed in a CDA or in an archaeological report. It would obstruct the energetic lines between these sites. If you look at the master plan specifically says, do not obstruct the view plane from cultural sites to the pu'us. This project would. That's why it does not meet the design guidelines. If they had followed the design guidelines of the Master Plan 2000, where they created a lower size and scope of a project that looks like a pu'u, you would not have this situation we're here. That would have mitigated the visual and other impacts, but they didn't do that. The Northern Plateau is significant. There's nothing has happened there yet. That's why this is so huge, the Kupuna have told us, on this mountain. We already know it's been damaged and developed on the very summit of it. Even if they took a site out from the top of the summit, even if they took 2 sites, existing telescopes on top of the summit, they could never build this telescope on the very top of the summit. The reason why, the height and scope and size of the dome. If you read the reports, they have existing height limits. No new telescopes on top of the summit can be over 130 feet. Otherwise, if you put a telescope on or recycle existing telescope, which is going to be over 180 feet, you would obstruct the view from the existing telescopes. That's why it could never be built on the top of the summit, even if you took down or recycled some of the other sites. That is the problem. The situation here is that TIO has another alternative site to put this, which is in the Canary Islands.
You're kind of going off of the question that I asked.
Okay, I'll bring it back.
There are other telescopes on Mauna Kea. Is it your position that those are also a bad thing to do? That building the other telescopes was bad from a cultural point of view?
From a cultural perspective and from the Conservation District rules, the extent of the development on Mauna Kea should never have happened.
Well, is there a point at which say in 1979, the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope was completed, which is a pretty big structure. It's about 125 feet tall. Was that too much already, or is there some later point at which it became too much?
The point when it became too much is when the EIS would say that the cumulative impacts have been substantial, significant, and adverse. At what point did it get to that? At what board did these telescopes come before the proposals, and did it get to that point? So we're here. We're not here. We're here. The telescopes are there, which shouldn't be there if you follow conservation law and just the concept of the significance of the cultural significance of this place. So the question really back to the board is, when did all these actions happen? One after another, whether it was from the 70s, the UHs, and the 80s, and the 90s. When did it get so bad that when you read the EIS, it says the cumulative impacts are significant, substantial, and adverse upon the cultural resources?
I'm asking you, what is your opinion as to when it became too much?
Well, in essence, my opinion is when he excavated and cut down that pool.
Oh, what pool was that? What are you talking
A
about?
pool at Kukahau'ula. So when the Keck and others shaved down close to 40 feet of the pool and excavated to build and went down and put those pools up. When the first telescope went up there, it was a small little telescope on Poliahu, what's known as today's Poliahu. Then things migrated down to the Kukahau'ula summit. I think at that point in time, when it became 1 to 2, 3 to 13, when it came off Poliahu and it started to excavate and shave down the top of Kukahau'ula, that's when it became too much. And so the question really is, when is enough is enough?
No. So was a Canada-France telescope okay from a cultural point of view?
Well, like I said, after they went to number 2 and number 3, then they started to shave down. Yeah. Then it became too much.
I think Canada-France was the number 2. The UH built an 80-foot tall telescope in 1970. And I forget when the James Clerk Maxwell telescope was built, but the Canada-France is about 125 feet tall. It was built in 1979. Was that too much?
Well, the impact, yes, has been too much. With like I said, after number 2, the impact has been significant. Because it was no longer a smaller telescope. When it started to go from the 3 meter to the 8 meter and then the 10 meters telescopes, it became too much.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.